how shortly after the coup did you go to Bolivia?
2 weeks. It was 2 weeks after the coup. I assumed that I would never come to Bolivia when the coup happened. I saw the levels of persecution, the massacres, the threats I was receiving, even when I was outside the country. Even some of my own family members were sending me some pretty brutal things, telling me, "Oh, come here, and then we'll teach you. We'll teach you to learn respect for blah blah blah." Even former friends I had in the past sending me sort of threats, even violent threats on Facebook. And I assumed that I would never come to Bolivia, that it's too dangerous while this current government was in power. But it was actually, it was Camilo Escalante who convinced me to come. And, I haven't looked back since, and I hope to make a life here.
And so what was it like when you got there? I mean, what kind of violence or persecution did you experience or observe? Because I don't think think people have a sense of what it was like. People, I think here, I mean, not people watching the show, but I think in the larger American audience thinks like, oh, there was a corrupt guy, a left-wing dictator, and then they kicked him out, and then there was a non-socialist in power who happens to carry on. It
was an extraordinary time. And actually, the 14 years that Evo Morales, Bolivia throughout its history for 100 years has been one of the most unstable places in the Americas. He's had, I think, the most presidents of anywhere in the Americas because of the number of coups, revolutions, just like general chaos throughout history. I mean, there's presidents that have been in power for like a few weeks, before being ousted in a coup or in a revolution or something. But the 14 years of Evo Morales' government was, first of all, the longest period with a single government. No part in Bolivian history had there been one government for more than about 10 years. Evo Morales achieved that extraordinary social stability, but all that just kind of disappeared in a few weeks when the coup happened. I mean, people's houses, like prominent leftists, their houses were getting burnt down. People being attacked in the street for wearing blue clothes. Blue is the color of the mass, the party. They get assaulted. People who are indigenous in any way will get assaulted. Just assume that they're a mass supporter just because of their race or cultural sort of clothes. That was the atmosphere. And sort of the first 10 days of the coup were the worst. That's when the two massacres happened. When people came out to protest to bring Evo Morales back in Sacaba, in Cochabamba, and here in Sencatos, El Alto, sort of La Paz. Overall, during that period, like 34 people were killed by the state while going out to protest. That was the atmosphere. I arrived just after these sort of peace accords had been signed between the social movements and the state. But so I wasn't there during the period of this sort of mass outbreak of violence. What I was here for was the second phase of repression, which was the sort of political persecution. So what happened after the massacres was they targeted union leaders, sort of prominent leftists. They were sort of given charges for things like sedition. I'd actually never heard of the word sedition before I came here, but wow. Sedition for not recognizing the authority of the state. That's a criminal offense. People were charged with that. For terrorism, I mean, for things like organizing a rally, that's considered terrorism. And so the people I was interviewing at the time, the people that had these criminal charges hanging over them, some of them had arrest warrants. And the day I arrived, I met up with a number of friends that I had here who ran a left-wing radio show, which was taken off air after the coup. And then a week later, after I saw them when I arrived, arrest warrants were put out for them. They said that their radio show was a form of terrorism and that they said seditious things. They were inciting people to sedition, even though the radio show actually went off air before the coup, just as the coup was happening. So the radio show was never on air while the new government was in power. They said that they committed retroactive sort of sedition, terrorism. Those friends had to flee to Argentina, go on foot, so to sort of be smuggled to the border and then sort of run across a river, get there unofficially. They are given refugee status in Argentina. And they're still there, obviously. Some of them were even, other charges were put on them. One of them was accused of burning a bus. They're just trying to throw everything at them. And that was the sort of atmosphere that I came in. Then that only got worse throughout the course of the year. So in the Tropic of Cochabamba, all of the leaders have numerous charges. Some of the people I consider my friends now, who are now being elected senators, such as Andrónico Rodriguez, who's like a big sort of young charismatic leader, Leonardo Losa, both of them now senators for Cochabamba. Each of them have more than, I think Andrónico has 17 or 18 criminal charges against him right now. One of them is for sedition, because he called Áñez a coup president. And that was sedition, and he faces criminal charges for that. But, you know, throughout all of that, now he's a senator, though. He's elected by the people.
And what happened to that mayor? There was that awful, awful footage of that mayor who had her hair cut off, was, you know, doused in red paint. It's like so incredibly disturbing. Anti-government protesters in Bolivia drag woman mayor to street.
They cut all her hair as well.
That was like the scariest part. Where is she now?
Well, she's probably the person who's been through the most during this past year. As you said, she's a mayor of a small town called Vinto, just outside Cochabamba. She was kidnapped, tortured during the coup. She was made to walk over broken glass.
Quiracoñeña, carajo! Quiracoño se respeta, carajo! ¡Has matado a gente de Quiracoño!
She was told that they were leading her to her death, and they were asking her to resign. But she refused to resign, and she survived, and after that became a sort of figure of bravery, figure for women all across the country. But it didn't end there. She was rescued from her captors, but then after the coup government took power, she was then persecuted in a massive way, probably more than any of the other leaders in the region. I interviewed her during the campaign, and she said she had 17 criminal charges hanging over her. Again, all the same things: sedition, terrorism. At one point, they even broke into a home and arrested her entire family, even her children, held them in a cell for a few days. And that one was, they accused her of drinking alcohol during lockdown, which is actually not even a crime. But then they were released a few days later, luckily. But that's how her life has been through this past year, just constant persecution. And now she's also an elected senator. She's an elected senator for the Department of Cochabamba. She'll take her seat as probably one of the most prominent figures of the MAS.
So, okay, guys, remember that woman we just saw with the red hair? This is her now.
De cosas que según ellos yo he cometido actos irregulares, pero ninguno de ellos me han podido probar y sé que no lo van a poder. Es más, uno por atentado a la salud, siendo que ellos que han atentado contra la salud mía y la de mis hijos, entrándose sin barbijos, entrándose a mi casa, a mi domicilio, a mi dormitorio, sacando a mi familia, encesándonos en un lugar que había mucha gente que estaba sin barbijo. Ellos han cometido esos actos. Es más, a mí me echan la culpa, pero bueno, nosotros vamos a seguir adelante porque creemos en la población. Sabemos muy bien que la gente está tomando conciencia. Y bueno, no es difícil ver que en estos 14 años hemos vivido toda la gente podía salir derecho de hablar, pero ahora en este momento vemos que no podemos salir a la calle porque somos agredidos, no podemos nosotros expresar lo que sentimos porque, bueno, ahí está la policía también, pedir a la policía que sea imparcial. La policía tiene que cuidar a la población, no se debe a un partido político, y bueno, el ejército lo propio, ¿no?
Wow.
Muchísimas gracias.
Oh, wow. That's you. Oh, I didn't realize that was you interviewing her.